a video of me just having a play around with some pomegranates to juice them. So I want to make some pomegranate juice and I want to freeze it. I bought some cheap. No, I didn't buy some cheap. These are cheap. These are £4 for a pound. It's that right time of year when pomegranates are in season. So these are cheap. Let's move those out of the way. They're just going to get in the way. I ended up with some free apple juice and I froze it, and I noticed that when I defrosted it, the apple juice split into. Well, the freezing process drew out some of the water from the apple juice and made it more. Another part of the apple juice concentrate. So the water floated to the top of the container, and the concentrated apple juice and sugars fell to the bottom of the container. And I kind of thought to myself, well, that's really interesting. And then kind of waffle on a bit in the video. I'm just frying some courgettes in the stove for another video. So I found I was kind of thinking that was interesting. So I waffled on about it in the video, and kind of decided that I'd made some pomegranate liqueur, and what I'd done is look at that. There's a beautiful colour. I'd reduced the pomegranate liqueur, reduced the pomegranate juice, and then added vodka. I've made it in a couple of different ways. You can just add pomegranate juice to food grade alcohol, but the only problem with that is the food grade alcohol. It's not particularly nice to drink, and making it out of a vodka is better. But you have to reduce the pomegranate juice to concentrate the flavour. Otherwise, you just end up with a watery, not very alcoholic drink. If you know how my alcohol kind of works, so you take it down to about 5% alcohol, which is, what's the fun in that? You want something that like 30% for a liqueur, something like that. So I kind of thought what we should do is we should see if we can make some pomegranate juice. I don't want to buy it. I'm going to make it because I think the pomegranate juice will have additives in it to stop it from not splitting, but to make it more stable as a juice, rather than if we just make it fresh. So what we're going to do is we're going to batter these while I'm making my dinner, and I'm talking away. Oh yeah, that thing on the counter. And then we'll freeze the pomegranate juice, and we'll see if the same thing happens with a. Don't want that one. Is it just what's wrong with that one? Is it just the pomegranates that are? No, the seeds are okay. The seeds are okay, and I just thought that was a little bit. It's just the. No, the seeds are fine. It's just the pithy bit, and we're going to get rid of the pithy bit. So we'll see if the same thing happens when we freeze pomegranate juice. If the water splits out away from the sugary pomegranate flavour. Hopefully it will. But if it doesn't, we'll just end up with some pomegranate juice, which we'll just drink or turn into a cordial maybe. Or maybe we'll want we might reduce it down and make some pomegranate molasses. Yeah, it's just the outside there. Yeah, the cheap little £4 for a pound, so you can't expect them to be amazing pomegranates for that kind of price. The other ones were £1.40 for a large pomegranate, so these really did seem like a bargain, and I bought too many. I bought 16. As always, I always buy too much, and I always end up with too much stuff to do things with, and it sits in the back of the cupboard, and then I think of something else to do with it. So maybe it's a good thing that I buy too much of stuff. But I'm waffling, aren't I? I really should be cracking on with this instead of just waffling away. But we're back. So we'll go back to the juicing process, and then we'll freeze and defrost. Puree these. There will be some bits of the membrane from the inside in there. We could go through it and pick them out, but I don't think it's going to affect the flavour that much. And also, the flavour of the membrane on the inside is not going to be that dissimilar from the seeds. I'm going to stick the hand blender in there anyway, so I don't think it will make too much difference. So, blendy blendy. and we'll see how it turns out. That seems to work quite well, has that? I've made this before, haven't I? Yeah, I will have done. I would have made a video. So, I would normally put it through a sieve and then through a cloth. I think we'll just put it through a cloth the first time. This is an old bellend sheet that I had cut in. Well, it was obviously cleaned it and then cut it down to size and had a seam put on the outside. So it's Egyptian cotton. It's about 400 thread count, or maybe 600. So it's a really good cloth to strain things through. It's a bit stained because we were faffing around with grape jelly last week. Oh, that was a faff. I really do give myself some jobs to do, and sometimes I just think to myself, oh God, why on earth have you started doing this? This is just ridiculous. And then I taste the grape jelly, and it's lovely. And I think to myself, yeah, that's why you do it. Compared to anything that you can buy, something that you can make is generally a lot better. So we'll let those down. Yeah, it's definitely dripping through. I can hear it. It stopped making a noise because it stopped hitting the bottom of the container underneath. So we'll let that go through. And then, do you need to see freezing it? No, but what I will say is I'm going to freeze it. So I've actually still got the apple juice. Where are we? If I can find it quickly. Yeah, so the apple juice was in that type of container. So I think that what we really should do is freeze it in something similar. So we'll freeze it in a glass jar like that, which is a similar type of shape, type of thing. And then I think, and then we'll hopefully be able to recreate what happened with the apple juice with the pomegranate juice. Now, frozen and then defrosted. I think that looks like red water on top. Let's just pour a bit off, give it a taste, and then I think what we'll do is we'll refreeze it and see if we can repeat the process. Yeah, that looks just like red water. It tastes a little bit of pomegranate, but not that much. So let's refreeze that and then defrost it again and see if we can repeat the process and concentrate the juice and sugars down at the bottom of the container. I don't want to sample the bottom of the container. What we'd have to do is like stick a knife in it and let some drip out and then taste it. I don't want to do that because I want to use the container again to refreeze it. So we'll refreeze it, and we might do that a few times to see if we get a more concentrated juice at the bottom. Frozen, defrosted again. It started to defrost at the top here. It's still frozen all down there. Let's just, but some of it's liquid. Let's just, I don't know why it went hiss. Oh, because there's a buildup of pressure because of expanding liquids. Expanding liquids and contracting liquids. So let's just taste that and see what that tastes like. It's not that intense. I don't know if that is. No, that just tastes like the pomegranate juice. So I think the separation comes after it's defrosted. So we'll let that defrost slowly, and then we'll see what happens. Right, so it's defrosted. I'm just putting the light behind it, and then we can see. So it's, the bottle's not straight, but you can get the idea that there's water at the top, and then it gets darker as it goes down. There's a little bit of sediment in the bottom, but anyway, so we'll pause and we'll suck some of this out. Right, so I have a syringe. Oh, luckily it fits in. So pull up like that, and it won't disturb it too much. Bit of a slow, laborious process. I suppose really what we should have done was we should have put it in a different container, and then I did notice I make elderflower cordial, but what I do is I make lots of the cordial base, and before I add the sugar I freeze it. So I freeze the elderflowery lemony water, and then defrost it when I want to add some sugar and turn it into cordial, because I don't want to freeze sugar. So if we just freeze the the base of it, the water and the elderflower and the lemon, and a little bit of citric acid, then it doesn't take as much space up in the freezer. So let's taste that. It looks relatively clear and there's not much red to it. It certainly tastes less than it did. There's still that pomegranate flavour to it. There's still that pomegranate flavour, but what I was thinking then, well, what we'll do is we'll refreeze this and see if we can repeat the process. But as you can see, we're getting quite a lot of water off the top. How interesting, eh? It's still the same colour. And I suppose we'll have to get some at the bottom at some point. And this is the only process. The only reason to do this is to preserve the actual flavour of the fruit juice that we're freezing. It certainly will use more electricity or gas, well, let's call it power, to freeze something than it does to heat it up. I don't understand how that actually works. I just know that it's true. So I don't want to take let's go down as far as we can. A limited amount of depth we can put this. That's not going to want to do anymore. So I still think there's a little bit of water at the top of there. I think it goes down to about there. So how can we get that out? How can we get that out? I'll get my scalpel and we'll cut the top off carefully. We might as well film it. So clean blade in the scalpel. Of course, you think you really shouldn't be freezing and defrosting and freezing and defrosting the same thing. But fruit's a little bit different. You certainly couldn't be freezing and defrosting meat, but fruit juice is different and not safe to do this process too, but it's not dangerous as such. I don't really understand why it's dangerous to freeze and then defrost meat and then freeze it again. I had the food hygiene inspectors at work this week. Well, inspector. I really should have asked her. I did have another question to I asked her, which she did have the answer to, but I really should have asked that question. But I don't think I'm going to have the opportunity to ask them again. Well, I suppose I could have. Oh, we can always ask the internet, can't we? But I'd much rather ask someone who knows. I'm not entirely sure the internet gives you the correct answers all the time. What was the question I asked her? Oh, it was, I'd preserved some chickpeas at home in a jar, and let's just taste this. And like in over like 4 weeks, the chickpeas started to ferment. Right, that's starting to taste more of pomegranate. That's starting to taste more of pomegranate. Yeah, and so she said, the reason that it started to ferment because there wasn't anything really in there to preserve it. It was just chickpeas and water. There was no salt in there. There was no acid. There was no chemicals, and it hadn't been just through the boiling process. Kind of really wasn't enough of a higher temperature to completely sterilise anything. So that was kind of quite interesting. I don't know. Maybe it's just me that the food hygiene inspectors always put a bit of a fear of God into me when they want to visit. Not that you work in a dangerous way or anything like that. More of a case of generalization, but some of them want to catch you out. You know, like they answer when someone's trying to catch you out. They ask you certain questions, which are maybe a little bit ambiguous. So, yeah, that's certainly more concentrated. But it seems darker below, so we'll just take a little bit more out, and then we'll dip this right in. So. Years ago, this is completely off subject. So, years ago, someone I know had a visit from the, was it Weights and Measures or Customs and Excise people? I think it was the Weights and Measures people, or the VAT people, or the duty people. I can't remember, but some kind of government came to their garage, and they had a diesel tank which was outside that was they used to run their vehicles from this diesel tank. And back in the up until probably about the 1970s, diesel in really cold weather used to wax up. So if you ever put olive oil in the fridge, it goes, it almost solidifies. And diesel used to do the same thing in particularly cold temperatures. And the way to combat this was to let the diesel down with either some petrol or something like a paraffin or a white spirit or something like that, just to thin it down to stop it from waxing. So whoever government agency came and was doing an inspection just offhandedly asked this old friend, well, what do you do about since your tank's outside, this diesel tank, what do you do about the diesel waxing up in the wintertime? Just like a casual kind of question, framed as in a way of, I'm looking for your advice on what you should do. And this friend of the family said, oh, I throw in a pint of paraffin into the tank of the lorry, so in with the diesel, and it waters it down. And the duty person, duty is the type of tax in the UK, said, oh well, there's no duty on paraffin. I'll have to charge you the duty on that. So they calculated how many tanks of fuel they were using, and how many pints of paraffin would have gone into that fuel, and charged them the duty on that. And I find it's like that sneaky way of people trying to catch you out. And some food hygiene inspectors are a little bit like that. They ask these questions that you kind of like, oh, this feels like a bit of a trick question. But the one that visited this week was lovely. But you're always kind of a little bit on edge, because they want to ask you questions which they deal with people every day, so they know what questions to ask to trip people up, so they can give them a lower score with the food hygiene, or that type of thing. But also there's that balance of power with people. Some people want to, some people like being a certain type of person used to be traffic wardens, because they like telling other people what to do, but you get that throughout. Yeah, but this food hygiene person was lovely, and I should have asked her that question. But anyway, so those two are definitely different colours. I'm getting completely off subject as always. These are one of my videos are too long, but maybe it's not just videos about food. So what we're going to do about this? So we know that it doesn't matter if we mix this up. So what we'll do is we'll pour it into this container, and we'll get some out of the very bottom. It's a little bit sedimenty, but it's certainly darker. And we'll just give it a little bit of a try. See, that's intense and sweet. Okay, so let's that and that and that and that and that, and top it up with that. And then what we'll do is we'll stick a lid on that and we'll freeze it, and it'll be easier to get out of there. So we'll freeze that one and kind of see what happens. And it's a little bit more uniform, is that container. So we'll be able to see a little bit better how it freezes and defrosts, and then we'll give that a try. Just like watery pomegranate juice. So freeze this, defrost it again, and we'll have another look and make a really long video. This is frozen overnight, and already you can see just there, already the sugar and the pomegranate flavour is wanting to separate from the water. So I think what we'll do is we'll put that in the fridge. I've got things to do today, and it's early morning, so I think what we'll do is we'll put that in the fridge so it slowly defrosts, and then we'll see if like not like an ice cube, but like an iceberg, if they separate in the container. So there is water ice in the centre, and then the pomegranate flavour and sugar separate out to the sides. It has started to defrost a little bit more. Let's have a look at that. So it doesn't look very watery, does it? It's still quite intense pomegranate, but not as much as I thought it was. But I'm relying on my taste buds, aren't I? And what it tasted like yesterday. So can we remove that ice from there? Oh no, it's quite a big block. So can't get further down, can I? Hopefully I won't have disturbed you too much at the bottom. It might be at the limit. No, that's a lot intense. That's intense further down. So it's certainly happened again that we split. Yeah. So it's happened again that we have removed even more water. So let's let that completely defrost, and then hopefully the concentrated flavour and sugar floats down to the bottom. Does it float down to the bottom? You obviously it floats to the top, doesn't it? I don't know. That's probably why I struggle with other languages, because I can't work out my own. So we'll let it fully defrost, and then we'll come back and we'll kind of see. We'll leave the top off; it'll defrost a little bit quicker, and then we'll be able to do a better reading, won't we? If it's happened again, and then we'll just keep repeating the process. And I was kind of thinking, well, the water that I've taken out of it already, I drunk that last night. I was kind of like a little bit thirsty. I kind of thought, there's no point wasting that, throwing it away. Might as well drink it. So I was thinking, well, I don't know how much liquid was in there, but I do, because it was a litre tonic bottle that I used. So I know that we started off with about a litre worth of pomegranate juice, and by the time we finished, we'll be able to see how much is left, which will give us the result, won't it? So we don't actually need to measure the water that we've taken out of it. But anyway, so let it defrost, and we'll have another look at it. Defrosted. Let's taste the top. Doesn't look too dark, no, does it? It's pomegranate-y. And then let's taste from the bottom. I think this experiment's just about done. Maybe just one more thing. Doesn't look that much darker. How does it taste? Certainly stronger. certainly stronger. So it looks like we can keep repeating and repeating and repeating this process. What I want to do is I want to freeze it another time, and then what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to, while it's still frozen, I'm going to defrost it on an angle and have it draining into. I'm just doing a bit of washing up at the same time. I really shouldn't try and do two things at once when I'm making a video because my videos get too long. So I'll defrost it on an angle. So kind of have the jar slightly open and then drain it into a container and see if the sugar and the pomegranate flavour comes out first and leaves the water ice in the jar. And I might just keep repeating the process and repeating the process and repeating the process. And this, I can't remember because this video's got far too long. I can't remember what I've said in it. But there is a way of distilling alcohol. It's not a particularly good way, it's not a very clever way of distilling alcohol because you don't get rid of the harmful parts of alcohol that give you, it doesn't get rid of the ethanol. It doesn't get rid of, it's the ethanol, or is it the methanol or the ethanol? I forget. One of them's poisonous and one of them blinds you. But what you can do is you can take cider, something like cider, and you can freeze it, and then the alcohol and the sugar doesn't freeze quite as quickly or as freeze at a higher temperature. So what you can then do is then you can pour off the sugar and the alcohol, and then you're just left with the water, and then you can freeze that alcohol and sugar again to draw out more water. And I suppose this is exactly the same process. The only problem with doing it with alcohol is you're left with the parts of the alcohol which are poisonous and send you blind, which is what happened in the depression in the Prohibition era in America. What would happen is people would start brewing their own alcohol and distilling it, and they didn't know how to distill it properly, and they were basically drinking meths, which is why quite a lot of people went blind and all that kind of stuff. Something that I studied at school, was that? But anyway, kind of quite interesting. Right, so off subject again. We'll freeze this, and then we'll have another faff around. Right, so this has been defrosting for most of the day. So what time did I wake up? I woke up early for some reason, so I was awake at about 6 o'clock this morning. So I got up and I made some Christmas cakes. Goodness only knows why. But I wanted to make them anyway, and you just kind of think, oh well, I'll put them in the oven now. They take about 3.5 hours. So if I put them in for 7, then they'll be done for 10:30, and then I went and did some gardening at my mum's house. So this has been out and it's been in the fridge for 15 hours, something like that. So you can see the water ice there is still frozen, and the juice has kind of wanted to seep out of it. So that's still got the juice and the sugary part there, whereas at the base it's just leftover water ice. Let's have a test of this juice that we removed the water from underneath and decide what we're going to do. I think we're almost at the end of this relationship. Well, though it feels like a relationship because there's been lots of ups and downs and lots of messing around. That's really intense, is that? That's really intense. I think if I was to make that pomegranate liqueur again, I'd use that. What we're going to do? That's going to start to defrost a little bit too much. We'll stick that back in the freezer, and then I think what we'll do with that is I think we'll do the same with that as well. So will that fit in? No, that's not big enough. We'll get another container and we'll freeze that and see if the same thing happens again, so we can extract even more water out of it. I think, yes, that'd be a good idea. It'll be frozen by morning, so if I'm up at 6 o'clock again, we can repeat the same process, can't we? They have been frozen and defrosted Same process again with in a over a container type of thing, like that. This is so I refroze that one in that big jar just to kind of freeze the ice, and then just give it, because it was defrosting. I thought if we'll just refreeze it again. What we can do is we can just slow down the process of the actual water defrosting, and hopefully the pomegranate juice should just slip out. And then what I did do is I did put it in that smaller container. The ice is turned to slush. The ice is turned to slush. Need to just put that back in there. Right, so that's defrosted. That's defrosted kind of quite quickly and turned to slush, which is a good sign. It's a good sign. Let's get rid of that out of there. And then I saved some of the juice from yesterday's experiment before we refroze these, so we should be able to taste a difference. So that one should taste the weakest, then that should taste a little bit stronger, and then that should be the strongest. Still, let's have a taste. So this one should taste roughly like that, but obviously the first bit of juice and sugar that comes out is going to be the most intense, because it's going to be the least frozen. That's definitely intense. That's more intense. That's more intense, and then this should be the most intense. Yes, but not much. But not much. So we kind of we know we've got to the end of how much flavour and sugar we can extract from this pomegranate juice, because it's just wanting to freeze homogeneously. Is that a word? Don't know. But anyway, so it'll freeze like a slushy it'll freeze like a sorbet, because the amount of sugar in there and concentrated fruit juice flavour. Right, so this tastes a little bit watery. This is the ice. So it's definitely worked. You've just got to be careful when you're concentrating fruit juices this way. I thought that was fascinating. But it's one of those things, like I should have known this before, because it's exactly how they used to make, was it Applejack, which was like a really strong cider, and that's exactly how they used to make Applejack. They used to make cider, and then they'd freeze. I've talked about this in the video before. They'd freeze it, and then the stuff that they could pour off the frozen cider, that was the sugary alcohol, and what was left was just like water, and you could concentrate the alcohol that way. So of course this is going to work in the same way, because sugar and water, I didn't realise they'd separate, but sugar and water freeze in different ratios. And then also what you can do is you can clarify stock in a similar way. You can freeze stock that might be a little bit cloudy, and then you can defrost it in a sieve or a cloth, and the clear stock passes through the cloth, and you're left, and the what's left in the sieve is the cloudy bits and kind of debris, if you would like. So I should have known that would work, but knowledge is kind of transferable. Someone will know. Someone will be doing this, or I'll be doing this out of a kind of certain way. Like, there's nothing new. There's nothing new apart from, well, there was someone invented graphene, didn't there? And that was new, and that's the last new thing that I've kind of heard invented. Really, the last big breakthrough, and that was like 20 odd years ago, 20 years ago. So that works. It's kind of quite interesting. Oh, and I did think as well, what you would be able to do was be able to freeze like a block of fruit juice, and then you could put it in a centrifugal spinner, and the spinning would potentially throw out the sugar and the concentrated fruit juice flavour, and you'd be left with a block of ice, and not everything else would be thrown out. But anyway, so that's kind of fascinating. But just something to add at the end of this is, where's that going to go in? I'm just going to go in there. Is I had the apple juice in the freezer that first started me thinking like this, and I've defrosted it. Well, it's a second bottle of apple juice, so I've just started defrosting it like that, and we have, I don't want to knock anything over, it's water ice at the top, so it's ice there, and then it's almost like it's filtering the juice down, so that should be concentrated apple juice flavour at the bottom. Let's get another spoon. Oh no, got one. So this should taste really appley and really sweet. Yes, really appley and really sweet. So that's this this entire video can be cut down, and all you really need to do is to put the fruit juice in a bottle like this, and freeze it, and then to defrost it, turn it upside down with the cap off, and all the concentrated flavour and sugar will seep out of the bottom, and we're left with water ice there and concentrated flavour down there. So maybe repeat it a couple of times, but it shows that we can actually do it with just fruit juice, rather than me faffing around with a video that's probably going to be like almost 40 minutes long. But I'm not going to cut it down, because I'm interested in the process. I'm always interested in the process. You know, just because, like we found out that knowledge is transferable, because we can make applejack and extract alcohol from a cider through the freezing process, and we can clarify stocks. We can use the same process to do other things as well. So because I've done fruit juice here, doesn't necessarily, it might mean that we can do something similar with stock as well, a vegetable stock or vegetable purees as well. So what I might do is I might, as part of another video, cook some carrot, puree it down, freeze it, and then see what happens when we defrost it. But anyway, I think that's rather fascinating. It's just the video is just a little bit too long, but not to worry, not to worry. But anyway, I don't know what I'm going to do with it all. I'm not going to make any vodka. I'm trying to cut down on drinking. It's not, as you get a bit older, it gets a bit tired, doesn't it? But that's delicious.